Hello, my name is DNA Gamer from Creepypasta Readings, and today I'm going to be doing my first ever Creepypasta reading. And today I'm going to be reading 3 short Creepypastas. One of them is The Sign, the second one is The Greyman's Book, and the third one is Lightning Flashes. So, let's get right to it. Creepypasta number 1, The Sign. I was driving home in the twilight fog. I had just left work, and I was on my way home. To my right there was a dense wood, and no light was visible from beyond it, except an eerie blue light coming from the darkest area of the forest. Parallel from my position on the road, there was a sign. It read, "Wrong way." And I thought, who in their right mind would want to go there? My turn would be coming up soon, and I lost track of where I was. I was lost. I decided I could stop at the nearest building and ask for directions to exit 29. I came up to a seemingly abandoned cabin with a blue light. I told myself that it was just the light from before, so I shouldn't be too lost. I walked up the steps and knocked on the front door. The door looked somewhat molded and tarnished, but I ignored it, seeing as this was the middle of nowhere, and I expected no better conditions. When no one answered, I knocked once more, thinking that they didn't hear the knock. Immediately after that, there was a faint rustle behind the door. Then a small crack appeared in between the area of the door and its frame. I assumed they wanted me to let myself in, so, foolishly, I followed. As soon as I entered, a rotten smell filled my nose. It smelled like something rotten was left there to die. It was unbearable, but I forced myself further. I searched the cabinets for anything to help me locate where I was at. While I was searching, I heard a faint giggle. It sounded like a child, no older than 5. It was hard to identify the gender of the child, but I concluded it was a boy. So I turned slowly, as not to frighten him, and asked who was there. As soon as I finished these words, I felt a sharp pain at my left side, like the cramp that you get when you run for too long. I thought it'd be too odd because I had walked the entire time. I heard the laughter again, but this time it was deeper and louder. I decided to look for the location of the laughter because it came and went, becoming louder and louder each time. "Hello?" I said. "Is anyone here?" I had to shift my weight to my right side as I moved because each step I took, the pain worsened. I came up to a door that was cracked slightly, just like the front door, and the laughter was more like screaming now. I had to cover up my ears to keep them from bleeding. I reluctantly opened the door. Inside, a sign read, "Turn around." Creepypasta number 2, The Greyman's Book. It was a relatively normal summer day, the birds chirping and the squirrels chattering. I didn't expect that everything would turn out the way that it did. Usually I would sit in my home and watch television until dinner, but my mom decided today would be a little different. We were going to a yard sale to see if there was anything we wanted. I tried telling her that people only sell what they don't want, but she didn't want to hear any of it. I decided that I would just go and see if they were selling any video games. As I expected, I was out of luck. What they were selling was mostly old stuff like antique lamps and some paintings, but the only thing that sparked my interest, it was a journal like I owned when I was a kid, with the words "Art Book" crudely drawn at the top. At the bottom, I could see the name crossed out, which I figured out said Douglas Gessner, and right below that name it said The Greyman, in pen. I walked up to the woman running the yard sale and asked her, "How much is this?" I didn't see any price. She responded with, "Oh, we don't care. We just need to get rid of it." It seemed like she had began to forget what was going on, so I pulled out a nickel and held it out to her. She snapped back to reality and grabbed the shiny coin from my hand, then told me to scram. I walked back to the car with the book, seeing that my mom had already taken everything she wanted. I ran up to my room and hopped on my bed, ready to read this weird-looking book from the front to the back. I opened up the first page and saw a simple drawing of a family that must have been drawn at the age of 8. I saw that the bottom of the page, Douglas Gessner, was signed in cursive. I was surprised to see that an 8-year-old would have known cursive, but I guess everyone is raised differently. I turned to the next page and saw a decent drawing of a plane in the sky. I mindlessly went through each drawing, looking at them long enough to process what they were. Then, going to the next. Eventually, I came to a drawing that puzzled me. It was a drawing of the earth with a hole right through it, like a spherical donut. I didn't know where this kid got this idea, so I assumed he must have had a great imagination. I turned to the next page and saw the neat perspective drawing, where I was staring down at someone's feet as they walked on the sidewalk. "This kid has talent," I whispered to myself as I looked at the drawing closely. Then I heard my mother call me down for dinner, so I turned the book upside down so the wind wouldn't blow my page away, and I walked downstairs. I ate my dinner as quickly as I could so I can head back up to continue looking at the book, and I saw the book had somehow been moved. It was once on my bed, but it was upside down on the floor. I picked it up to see it turn to a different page. The picture showed a drawing of a hand holding a pencil, writing something. As I looked closer to the drawing, I could see it was writing the poem, The Raven, which I had to do a report on once. I was stunned by how a kid could draw a hand so well, and write the works of Edgar Allan Poe with such great detail. It almost made me feel ashamed for not doing that at this kid's age. I looked at the bottom of the page and saw that the kid's name had been signed more jagged. It also showed his age at the time of this drawing was 10. I flipped back to the page I was at earlier when the sidewalk. The kid was also at the age of 10 at the time, but his handwriting seemed normal. The number of pages began between the sidewalk drawing and the raven drawing was 23. So if I assumed he drew one of these drawings every day, then it took him 24 days to go from clean handwriting to rushed handwriting. What's a 10-year-old in a hurry for? I asked myself as I quickly skimmed over those 23 drawings that were skipped over. I saw a drawing of a zebra, a drawing of a space shuttle burning up in re-entry, and a drawing of an Empire State Building collapsing. I forgot about how a child would be able to draw these things so well. As I was confused about why a child would draw these things, I turned back to the raven drawing and then turned forward. The drawing I saw surprised me a bit. It was a drawing of a crime scene, with the police tape surrounding where someone had been killed. Either this kid spent 10 minutes standing by a crime scene and sketching, which probably wouldn't be allowed, or, as I assumed, he had a crazy imagination, although imagination doesn't explain how detailed the drawings look. I turned to the next page and I saw a simple drawing of a brick wall, which unnerved me for some reason. It was a habit of mine to fear the unknown, and not knowing what was behind that wall frightened me and caused my mind to wander. The next drawing was an entire page filled with the words, "I did a bad thing." Next page said, "Jeder Schritt, werde ich beobachten sein." I looked it up online and found it was German for "every step you take, I'll be watching you." Those were the lyrics of a song from the 80s, which must meant this journal was a bit old. I realized that this kid wasn't just imaginative, something must have been wrong with him. The next page showed a drawing of a white rabbit, reminding me of Alice in Wonderland. As I stared at the drawing long enough, I saw a different image pop out. Some of the dots on the rabbit formed the face of Alice. I quickly turned to the next page, as I was beginning to feel unnerved. I was quite sure if I wanted to continue reading, there are about 40 pages left. I told myself that it was just a bunch of drawings. Even these weren't drawings of a killer. They couldn't harm me. I turned to the next page and saw another first-person drawing, from the perspective of a man lying on the floor in a padded cell, with the words, "Don't blame yourself," written on the ceiling. I turned to the next page and there was a drawing of a raven. I chuckled a bit, remembering that the drawing from many pages back. I might have just tried to laugh to forget about how creeped out I was. I turned to the next page. The drawing was of a hallway with a shadowy figure at the end of it. The next drawing looked similar, but the shadowy figure was closer. The next drawing showed the figure even closer, close enough to even touch me. I closed my eyes and turned to the next page. It was a drawing from the perspective of a man on a boat looking down at a mermaid who was looking up at him. The next page had the words, I know what I did, repeated 5 times before it turned into maniac scribblings. I figured out that the words at the bottom of the page were cursive, asking, "Do you know what they did?" I was frightened and confused by this, but I convinced myself to continue reading, turning to the next page slowly, as I saw a drawing of what appeared to be a hand turning a page. I realized that the page it was turning was the page I had just turned. I could barely see an image on the page the hand in the drawing was turning to. It was a pen with the word freedom written on it. I figured it must have been some symbolic nonsense that I didn't care enough to think about. I decided that instead of actually looking at all these pages, I would just flip to the last one. I flipped the pages forward, but it stopped a few pages before the last one. It was a drawing of a 10-year-old boy looking into the mirror, and the mirror was a creepy-looking man, probably about 30. Is this a metaphor for losing your childhood innocence? I didn't care, since I was ready to finish this book. The word "me" filled the entirety of the next page, and in those letters were many words: sad, thoughtful, imaginative. Next page showed a skeleton resembling an Ewok from Star Wars. Must have been popular when the kid was alive. There were only 2 pages left, so I flipped to the next one eagerly. It was an entire paragraph, which I read quietly to myself. There are many doors surrounding me, and I feel a pain in my knees. I wish I could turn time back so that I never attacked. I guess you would probably agree. This interested me greatly, and it made me think about who this person was. I turned to the next page, and was surprised to see a big drawing of an eye staring at me. The eye seemed a bit wooden, but the pupil almost had life in it. I shut the book, not wanting to look at it anymore. I threw it at the top of my bookshelf so I could forget about it, but I couldn't stop looking at it. That night I began to have strange dreams, probably would call them nightmares, but these dreams confused me so much that I could barely figure out what to call them. I remember one dream where I was lying in an empty field staring at the night sky. The stars were moving around to form an image. It was an eye. I got up and began to run in a random direction, but the ground began to collapse beneath me. With nowhere to jump, I simply curled myself into a ball and put my face in my hands. I felt someone tap me on the shoulders, looked up and saw a giant raven flying above me. It whispered, "All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream." And then it flew away, waking me up. When I woke up, I found I was not in bed, but lying in a closet. I was relieved to see that I wasn't tied up, and I pinched myself to make sure that I wasn't a stupid dream within a dream. Then I slowly got off the floor and opened the door just a bit, peeked out to see the drawing on the wall. It was a raven. Whoever wrote that book must have had an obsession with Edgar Allan Poe, I whispered to myself. I walked out and looked around and saw that this was a bedroom. I'm not sure if bedrooms are supposed to have beds, because this one technically didn't. There was just a mattress on the ground with a pillow and paper-thin covers. On the wall, a drawing was nailed in. It was a drawing of an eye. I shivered backing away from it. But I bumped into someone. I turned around and saw a semi-familiar figure, a tall, scrawny man with white hair and gray skin. "Hello?" I awkwardly said to the man, not sure what to say. "How did I get here?" I chose to ask, since this guy was the only one here. "You've seen me before," the man unhelpfully replied. "In my book." I suddenly see the images I saw in the book of the flashback in my head, and I shake my head furiously. "Oh yeah, you're the Doug," the man gently slapped me, just to make me stop talking. "No, not that name," he half begged, half commanded. "I am the Greyman." I nodded nervously, remembering those words. I asked how I got here. I reminded him, and he just blinked. Yes, you got here." He muttered several things to himself as he walked to the closet and rummaged through many things. He pulled out a needle and turned to me. "I want you to say," he whispered to me, and I backed away quickly. He walked toward me faster, holding the needle, but I ran down the stairs before he could inject me. "Stay away from me," I yelled at him as I reached to swing the door open and run out. Then I saw that there was no doorknob. I turned to him about to cry, and he was silently laughing. He pushed me against the door and told me the difference between the stupidity and genius is that genius has its limits. Then injects me with the needle into my arm, and my vision faded. Next time I opened my eyes, I was lying against the wall. I tried to fit my arms, but I felt weak. "I'm sorry," he told me from another room, but I had no other options. I felt like my mouth was numb, and when I tried to speak, I just wheezed. I saw visions of what I had seen in the past, in many different futures. If my parents were ever to find me, which they would never be able to, I would never be the same as who I once was. I guess I'd just lie here until I either die of starvation or he puts me out of my misery, one way or another. Creepypasta number 3, lightning flashes. It was a slow-moving Monday night. My mother was preparing dinner while my older sister talked on the phone with her annoying boyfriend. As for me, I was happily building endless creations with Legos in the living room, directly adjacent from a window. As I was finishing making a rocket ship, I noticed out the window in the neighbor's house a figure sitting in a motionless rocking chair. It was very odd because I knew the neighbors very well. They were the type of people who overly indulged any child, like giving full Twix bars on Halloween. And they were always athletic and an active family, and my tiny brain couldn't wrap around the fact that they were not up and moving. My train of thought was broken by my mother beckoning me to come to dinner. I joined my mother and my sister at the table and heaved myself into the chair. My sister, like every night, was glued to her phone, and my mother had a new book she was reading. So that dinner, we just sat around and chewed. My bedtime was 8:30, which was about 2 hours before my mother and sister were even considering sleeping. As I lifted my legs up the stairs, I couldn't help but ponder the reason for the neighbors' laziness that evening. It was so unlike them. I did my usual routine, getting myself a cup of water, grabbing my teddy bear, Stuffy, and tucking myself into bed. As I went to turn off the light, I noticed my window was open, so I got up to close it. That's when I noticed the dark clouds were approaching, and I remembered from school that a storm was coming. I shut the window and walked back to the bed and turned off the light. At about 3:20 a.m., I awoke to a huge flash of lightning. The brightness was almost blinding, but I knew that as long as I was inside, I had nothing to worry about. Suddenly, there was another huge flash, and then another. At the time, I thought nothing of it. I thought that lightning could just be in very close groups. I eventually fell back asleep and ignored the flashes. Then it hit me. Why is the air cold? I looked over and noticed that my door was wide open. I have always closed my door, and my mom almost never opens it for any reason. That's when I realized something was very wrong. I jumped from my bed and ran into my mom's room. Only then did I realize when my mom had those sheets wrapped around her so tightly. She had bruises on her neck and on her head, and when my sister no longer had eyes. To this day, they still don't know who murdered my mother and sister, or the neighbors. The only evidence the police have are the bodies and a digital camera in my closet that contained photos of me sleeping on the night of the lightning. Okay, well that was all 3 creepypastas. Let's talk about the first one. The first one, it seemed like a pretty good idea, but it wasn't executed correctly considering the amount of time that it was put in. Like, that was about a 2-minute creepypasta, but that was like really short. And it could have, like, if there was more detail in it, that would have probably been a better creepypasta. And I know a lot of people, this may be like a thing that you like in creepypastas, but personally, I don't like cliffhangers, so I like knowing absolutely knowing what happens at the end. That's what I prefer about creepypastas. And like, there was this one really good creepypasta, really good, and then something scary happened at the end, and then it just cut off there. Just, ooh, you wanted to hear the end? Well, too bad. And that was just it. But yeah, I didn't think it was too bad, but I probably think it could have done with a bit more. The Greyman's book, the second creepypasta. That was a good creepypasta. I enjoyed that pretty much. And I enjoyed how, like, the kid actually, like, got so into the book that it was, like, the only thing that he could think about the rest of the day, but, like, at the end, it kind of ends up killing him. So, yeah, that kind of sucks for him, but Thank goodness this isn't real. And lightning flashes. This was very creepypasta. Like, more than half of the story was very good until the lightning wakes him. Oh man, that ending was, you probably heard me pause there at the end for a second. It's because I had trouble reading it. I had trouble reading. Only then did I realize why my mom had those sheets wrapped around so tightly around her neck and those bruises on her head, and why my sister had no longer had eyes. I had trouble saying that line because I couldn't read it correctly. But yeah, personally, I did enjoy these 3 creepypastas. My favorite was probably Lightning Flashes. I preferred it over Greyman's book just because, like, this type of thing is, like, a bit more... This is a bit more of a very unique creepypasta, like, including the lightning flashing that saved his life. But, and, like, how the ending, like, they were never able to figure out who killed them. But, like, the one thing I would say to make it better is that, like, it could have gone into a bit more detail towards the end and, like, what happened. But that's basically all I have to say. And, yeah. Tell me down below in the comments if you like these creepypastas, if you want me to read more, and specifically, if you want me to read a specific creepypasta for you guys, hit it down below in the comments and I'll take a look. But yeah, pretty much I'm just gonna be going to the Creepypasta wiki and pressing random pasta, and I'll like press that and I'll choose 3 of them for that day, for that video. Okay, so that's just about it. This is DNA Gamer from Creepypasta Readings, signing out. Bye-bye.